Welcome to True Crime Threads. Today we dive into a deadly secret behind a seemingly perfect marriage. Ben Wallace and his wife Naomi were the picture-perfect suburban couple. Married for 8 years, they lived in a quiet neighborhood, surrounded by friends who envied their seemingly idyllic life. Naomi, an aspiring artist, was known for her charm, while Ben, a financial analyst, was admired for his dependability and kindness. From the outside, their lives seemed like a dream weekend: barbecues with friends, vacations filled with laughter, and a cozy home where they spent evenings planning for their future. But there was one unspoken shadow over their marriage: their struggle to have children. For years they had tried, visiting specialists and enduring emotional highs and crushing lows. The absence of a child weighed heavily on both of them, but Naomi seemed especially affected. She often expressed her fears that she might never experience motherhood, and Ben, ever supportive, reassured her that their love was enough. Together they pressed on, trying to focus on the joys they did have rather than what was missing. That's why Naomi's announcement one sunny Saturday morning seemed like a miracle. Standing in their kitchen with tears streaming down her face, she held up a positive pregnancy test and declared, "We're going to be parents." Ben froze, overwhelmed with joy and disbelief. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around while tears of happiness filled his own eyes. The news breathed new life into their marriage, reigniting a spark that had dimmed over the years. Word of the pregnancy spread quickly, and their friends and neighbors showered them with congratulations. It wasn't just a milestone for Ben and Naomi, it felt like a victory for everyone who had watched their journey and rooted for them. Naomi reveled in the attention, sharing updates about her cravings, morning sickness, and plans for the nursery. Ben, meanwhile, threw himself into preparing for fatherhood. He spent hours researching parenting tips, budgeting for baby supplies, and even picking up extra projects at work to save for the future. Their home transformed as they began preparing for the arrival of their little one. Naomi insisted on painting the nursery a soft shade of yellow, a neutral color they both agreed would be perfect regardless of the baby's gender. Ben built a crib with his own hands, proudly showing it off to anyone who visited. Every detail, no matter how small, was a labor of love. To Ben, it seemed as though everything was finally falling into place. They were on the brink of the life they had always dreamed of: a happy family, a fresh chapter, and a future full of promise. But beneath Naomi's glowing smile and the buzz of excitement, a secret festered, a truth so dark it would unravel everything. As the months passed, Ben's excitement for fatherhood only grew, but so did his curiosity about Naomi's pregnancy. At first, he brushed aside minor oddities, attributing them to his own lack of knowledge about what a pregnancy entailed. However, small inconsistencies began to pile up, creating a nagging sense of unease he couldn't ignore. Naomi often mentioned visiting the doctor alone, citing scheduling conflicts that prevented Ben from accompanying her. Whenever he asked about the baby's progress or requested to see ultrasound photos, she would either change the subject or produce vague excuses. Initially, Ben gave her the benefit of the doubt, thinking her behavior might stem from nerves or stress. After all, they had waited so long for this moment, and he knew the pressure to have a perfect pregnancy could weigh heavily. But there were moments when her defensiveness seemed disproportionate, and her emotions felt strangely calculated. The nagging suspicion that something was off began to grow stronger. One afternoon, while cleaning the house, Ben stumbled upon a drawer filled with prenatal vitamins. To his surprise, the bottles were unopened. He had assumed Naomi was diligently following her doctor's advice, but this discovery made him question everything. When he casually brought it up, she waved it off, claiming she was taking other supplements prescribed by her doctor. Her explanation seemed plausible, but the doubt in Ben's mind lingered. Things took a darker turn when Ben found a receipt tucked into Naomi's purse while searching for his car keys. It was dated a few weeks earlier and listed a prosthetic pregnancy belly among the purchases. For a moment he convinced himself it had to be a mistake. Perhaps she was using it for an art project, or maybe it had something to do with a costume. But the more he thought about it, the less sense it made. Unable to dismiss the mounting evidence, Ben decided to pay closer attention to Naomi's behavior. He began noticing that she rarely allowed anyone to touch her stomach, even when their friends eagerly asked to feel the baby kick. She would laugh it off, claiming the baby was shy or not active at the moment. Her reluctance seemed to intensify as her pregnancy progressed, or rather, as it was supposed to progress. Ben couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Determined to uncover the truth, he started piecing together more clues, looking for answers that Naomi seemed unwilling to provide. As his suspicions grew, so did the tension in their home. Naomi, sensing his unease, became more guarded, while Ben wrestled with whether to confront her. The harmony they once shared was now fractured, replaced by an undercurrent of mistrust and fear. One evening, as the unease between them reached its breaking point, Ben decided he could no longer keep his suspicions to himself. Armed with the evidence he had quietly collected, he confronted Naomi in the privacy of their living room. He held up the prosthetic receipt, his hands trembling as he demanded an explanation. At first, Naomi laughed nervously, brushing it off as a misunderstanding, but the look in Ben's eyes told her he wasn't buying it. He pressed further, laying out every inconsistency he had noticed: the unopened vitamins, the missing ultrasound photos, and her reluctance to let anyone near her growing belly. With nowhere left to hide, Naomi broke down. She admitted to faking the pregnancy but insisted it wasn't what it seemed. Tearfully, she claimed her deception was born out of fear. She told Ben she was terrified he would leave her if she couldn't give him a child, that their years of trying and failing had left her desperate. Her voice cracked as she begged for his forgiveness, pleading that she had done it all for the sake of their marriage. But Ben wasn't moved by her explanation. The betrayal hit him harder than he could have imagined. This wasn't just a lie, it was a carefully orchestrated web of deceit that had spanned months. His dream of becoming a father, the excitement he had poured into their future, the joy he had shared with their friends and family, it was all built on a foundation of falsehoods. His anger boiled over, and he told Naomi he needed space to think. The argument ended with him storming out of the room, leaving Naomi sobbing behind him. Over the next few days, Ben began distancing himself from Naomi. He stayed late at work and avoided her at home. He even confided in a close friend about what he had discovered, hinting that he was considering leaving the marriage altogether. The tension in their home was palpable, and Naomi's behavior became increasingly erratic. She alternated between pleading for forgiveness and lashing out in frustration, her desperation to keep her secret from going public consuming her. Then, one fateful night, their lives took a devastating turn. The neighbors reported hearing a heated argument erupting from the Wallace home, louder and more volatile than ever before. Naomi claimed later that she had tried to reason with Ben, to stop him from leaving her and exposing her lies. But whatever happened that night ended in tragedy. The next morning, Ben's colleagues reported him missing when he didn't show up for work. His phone went straight to voicemail, and no one had seen or heard from him since the argument. Days later, a jogger stumbled upon a shallow grave in a remote hiking trail just outside town. The body inside was badly bruised, but unmistakably it was Ben. His promising life had been cut short, and the quiet neighborhood they called home was about to be rocked by the revelation of what really happened. The discovery of Ben's body sent shockwaves through the community, turning the Wallace household into the epicenter of a chilling murder investigation. Neighbors who had once admired Naomi and Ben's seemingly perfect life now watched with growing suspicion as police cars came and went from their quiet street. Naomi, still reeling from the events of the past days, appeared distraught in front of the cameras, tearfully pleading for answers about her husband's death. But to the detectives, her behavior raised more questions than sympathy. From the outset, Naomi's version of events seemed inconsistent. She claimed that she and Ben had argued on the night he disappeared, but she insisted that he left the house shortly afterward, saying he needed time alone. However, her story began to unravel when neighbors recalled hearing prolonged shouting, followed by what sounded like something heavy being dragged. More damning still, When detectives reviewed security footage from nearby traffic cameras, they spotted Naomi driving Ben's car in the direction of the hiking trail where his body was found. The forensic investigation provided even more incriminating evidence. A luminol scan of the Wallace garage revealed bloodstains on the concrete floor, faint but impossible to miss under the glow of forensic lights. Tests confirmed that the blood matched Ben's DNA. Investigators also found traces of soil in the trunk of Naomi's car, which matched the composition of the dirt near the shallow grave. Despite mounting evidence, Naomi maintained her innocence, claiming that she had no idea how Ben ended up dead. Her alibi began to crumble further when detectives discovered financial discrepancies in the couple's accounts. Over the past year, Naomi had withdrawn significant sums of money from their shared savings, funds she couldn't account for. Suspicion turned into certainty when a search of her digital devices revealed searches for topics like how to dispose of a body and undetectable poisons. Faced with these revelations, detectives brought Naomi in for formal questioning. Under the pressure of hours-long interrogations, she eventually confessed, though her story still didn't align with the evidence. She claimed that Ben's death had been an accident, a result of an argument that turned physical. According to Naomi, she had pushed Ben in self-defense, causing him to fall and hit his head. In a panic, she said, she had disposed of his body out of fear that no one would believe her. But the autopsy report contradicted her claims. Ben's injuries included multiple blunt force trauma wounds, far more severe than what could be explained by a single fall. The evidence suggested something far more sinister, a deliberate and violent act. Naomi's attempts to manipulate the narrative only deepened the investigators' resolve to uncover the full truth. As the case moved closer to trial, the picture of what had happened began to take shape. Naomi's desperation to hide her lies had escalated into a tragic and irreversible decision, leaving a community grappling with the loss of a man they had thought they knew and the dark truths hiding behind the walls of his home. As Naomi's trial began, the courtroom was packed with people eager to hear the sordid details of a case that had shattered the illusion of the perfect suburban life. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture of the events leading up to Ben's death, piecing together a timeline that exposed Naomi's calculated deceit. The pregnancy, they argued, was not merely a desperate act to keep her marriage intact, but part of a larger scheme driven by greed and control. Over the course of the trial, Naomi's double life was brought to light. Financial records showed that she had been secretly withdrawing money from Ben's accounts for over a year, using the funds to cover mounting debts and sustain a lifestyle far beyond their means. She had been frequenting high-end boutiques, dining at expensive restaurants, and even leasing a second apartment in the city, all while hiding these expenditures from Ben. Prosecutors suggested that the fake pregnancy had been a way to keep him distracted, ensuring that he wouldn't scrutinize their finances too closely. The most damning evidence came from Naomi's own digital trail. Forensic analysts presented her internet search history, which included chilling queries such as how to stage an accident, undetectable murder methods, and how long does it take to inherit life insurance. Investigators also discovered that Naomi had recently taken out a significant life insurance policy on Ben, listing herself as the sole beneficiary. The timing of the policy, mere weeks before his death, left little doubt about her intentions. The defense attempted to argue that Naomi's actions were the result of emotional distress, claiming that years of infertility and fear of abandonment had driven her to irrational decisions. They painted her as a woman who had acted impulsively out of desperation, not malice. Naomi herself took the stand, tearfully insisting that Ben's death had been an accident, a tragic outcome of a moment of weakness and panic. However, the prosecution dismantled her narrative piece by piece. Witnesses testified about Naomi's increasingly erratic behavior in the months leading up to Ben's death, describing her as manipulative and self-absorbed. The autopsy report, which detailed multiple blunt force injuries inconsistent with her claims of self-defense, became the linchpin of the case. Forensic experts testified that the wounds suggested a prolonged and violent attack rather than a single, accidental fall. In the end, the jury deliberated for just a few hours before returning a guilty verdict. Naomi was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow, as Ben's family and friends grappled with the finality of the verdict. The case left a lasting scar on the community, serving as a haunting reminder of the darkness that can hide behind even the most carefully crafted facades. Ben Wallace, remembered as a kind and devoted man, had been betrayed in the most devastating way by the person he trusted most. His legacy was honored by those who knew him, even as they struggled to comprehend the depths of Naomi's deception and the tragedy it had unleashed.